The first time 82-year-old Eleanor Patterson saw the massive pit bull in her neighbor's yard, her heart nearly stopped. Not from fear, but from recognition. Something in those deep amber eyes reminded her of the countless strays she had rescued throughout her life, each one carrying that same look of quiet desperation mixed with flickering hope. What she couldn't have imagined was that this intimidating-looking dog named Atlas would soon become her most cherished companion, teaching an entire community about the transformative power of unconditional love. Eleanor had been living alone in her small ranch home in Bakersfield, California for 3 years since her husband Walter passed away. Her children lived states away, busy with their own families and careers, visiting maybe twice a year if she was lucky. The loneliness had settled into her bones like arthritis, a constant ache that no amount of television or crossword puzzles could ease. Her neighbors, the Rodriguez family, were kind enough, but they kept to themselves, and Eleanor respected that boundary. That changed the day she heard the crying. It wasn't human crying, but the deep, mournful howls of an animal in distress. Peering through her kitchen window, Eleanor saw Atlas chained in the Rodriguez backyard, his massive frame hunched against the February cold. His food bowl was empty, and there was no shelter in sight. Miguel Rodriguez worked double shifts at the auto plant, and his wife Carmen was overwhelmed managing their 3 young children alone. They had gotten Atlas as a guard dog, but the reality of caring for such a large, energetic breed had quickly become more than they could handle. Eleanor watched this scene unfold for several days, her heart breaking a little more each time she saw Atlas lying motionless on the cold ground. She remembered her late husband's words about how kindness was never wasted, even when it seemed like the smallest gesture. Walter had been the one with the soft heart for animals, but Eleanor had always been the practical one, the one who worried about vet bills and responsibility and what the neighbors might think. But something about Atlas's quiet suffering called to the part of her that had been dormant since Walter's death. The part that still believed in second chances and the healing power of love. On a particularly cold morning, Eleanor made her first move. She prepared a warm bowl of leftover chicken and rice, the same comfort food she had been making for Walter during his final months. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the fence, not from fear of the dog, but from the vulnerability of reaching out after so much isolation. Atlas lifted his massive head and looked at her with those same amber eyes she had noticed that first day. There was no aggression, no threatening posture. Just exhaustion and a flicker of curiosity. Eleanor slid the bowl under the fence and whispered softly, "There you go, sweet boy. Nobody should be hungry." The transformation wasn't immediate. Atlas approached the food cautiously, as if kindness was a foreign concept he couldn't quite trust. But he ate every bite, and when Eleanor checked the next morning, he was waiting by the fence, not demanding, just hopeful. This routine continued for weeks. Eleanor would bring Atlas food and fresh water, talking to him in the gentle voice she had once reserved for her grandchildren's phone calls. She told him about Walter, about her garden that she no longer had the energy to maintain, about the books she was reading and the shows she watched to fill the quiet hours. Something remarkable began to happen. Atlas started responding to her voice, his tail wagging tentatively when he saw her approaching. Eleanor found herself looking forward to these moments more than anything else in her day. The loneliness that had felt so overwhelming began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Carmen Rodriguez noticed the change in both Atlas and the elderly woman next door. One afternoon, she approached Eleanor with tears in her eyes and broken English mixed with Spanish, explaining their situation. Miguel was working himself to exhaustion, they were struggling financially, and Atlas deserved better than they could provide. She asked if Eleanor would consider adopting him, knowing somehow that this quiet woman had been the source of Atlas's recent contentment. Eleanor's first instinct was to say no. She was 82, living on a fixed income, and hadn't owned a pet in decades. But looking at Atlas, who seemed to understand the conversation happening around him, she saw something that changed everything. In his eyes was the same expression Walter used to get when he looked at her, complete trust and boundless affection. The adoption process took several weeks, involving vet visits, city permits, and more paperwork than Eleanor had filled out in years. Her daughter Rebecca called from Phoenix, concerned about her mother's decision to adopt such a large dog at her age. But Eleanor was determined, more determined than she had been about anything since Walter's funeral arrangements. The day Atlas officially became hers, Eleanor prepared for his arrival like she was bringing home a grandchild. She bought the softest dog bed she could find, premium food, and toys she hoped might interest him. When Miguel helped bring Atlas over, removing the chain that had bound him for so long, the dog seemed to understand that this was a new beginning. What happened next amazed everyone who witnessed it. Atlas, despite his intimidating appearance and difficult past, transformed into the most gentle, protective companion imaginable. He followed Eleanor everywhere, seeming to sense her physical limitations and adjusting his pace to match her slower steps. When she sat in her garden, he would lie beside her, a living reminder that she was no longer alone. The bond that developed between them became legendary in their neighborhood. Eleanor would tell anyone who would listen about Atlas's intelligence, his gentleness with children, and his uncanny ability to sense when she needed comfort. On days when her arthritis flared up, Atlas would rest his massive head on her lap, providing warmth and companionship without being asked. Their daily walks became a neighborhood event. Children who had initially been frightened by Atlas's size learned that he was gentle and patient, allowing them to pet him while Eleanor watched with pride. Other elderly residents began stopping to chat, drawn by the obvious joy that radiated from both Eleanor and her unlikely companion. The story of their friendship spread beyond their immediate community when Eleanor's granddaughter visited and posted a video of Atlas carefully helping Eleanor up the front steps, his powerful frame providing stability while his expression remained focused and protective. The video went viral within days, touching hearts around the world and inspiring countless comments about the special bond between humans and rescue animals. Messages poured in from people sharing their own stories of unexpected friendships and the healing power of opening your heart to love, even when it comes in an unexpected package. Eleanor, who had felt forgotten by the world, suddenly found herself at the center of a global conversation about kindness, second chances, and the courage it takes to love again after loss. But for Eleanor, the real miracle wasn't the internet fame or the thousands of supportive messages. It was the simple fact that every morning, she woke up with a purpose. Atlas needed her, and she needed him, and together they had created something beautiful from what could have been a story of neglect and loneliness. Their bond reminds us that love doesn't always come in the package we expect. Sometimes it comes with 4 legs, a misunderstood reputation, and a heart big enough to heal years of loneliness. Eleanor and Atlas prove that when we open our hearts to kindness, we don't just change one life, we change our own. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales of compassion and hope. Share Eleanor and Atlas's story with someone who needs a reminder that love has no age limits, and that the most beautiful friendships often begin with a simple act of kindness. Together, we can spread more stories like this one, proving that in a world that sometimes feels divided, love and compassion still have the power to unite us all.